We are live for episode 45 of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse, sponsored by and hosted by my company, Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors. I stole that from my good buddy, Michael Bull. He doesn't even know we're buddies, but I followed him for at least 10 years now as well, down at Bull Realty out of Atlanta, Georgia. He always says, welcome to my show, and it is sponsored by Bull Realty. That is my company. So I can say that now, which is pretty cool. So I'm excited for today's guest. I'm going to get into all of that in 1 second. But 45 episodes, today's guest has been podcasting for over 10 years now. I could not find how many episodes that he has put out and how he has guested on. We'll ask him that question here. But I was having a conversation earlier today. And it was all about consistency and forming habits. And there's very few podcasters, very few people out there that are willing to do something for 10 years. And while I have had different shows over the last 7 years, I've not committed to one show for 10 years. And we've been doing this show now for 2 years and have 45 episodes. Got some big ideas in regards to how to blow the show up next year. Working on building out a daily commercial real estate podcast, Kansas City focus. So I'll talk more about that today as well. But I always like to introduce our team first, Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors, since they do sponsor the show here. If you've engaged with our firm, you've definitely engaged with Katie Cobb. She does everything for me and for the team here. We wouldn't be able to do half of what we do without Katie. So shout out to Katie and Nick Morales, Nathan, Mitch, Derek, and Chad. And I am looking to add at least 2 more individuals. We have someone joining next week, which I'm very excited about, sort of a hybrid. But I would love for you to reach out to me if you'd like to talk about doing commercial real estate in Kansas City in a very specific, unique way, utilizing artificial intelligence, digital marketing to sell, buy, develop real estate in the Kansas City market. So definitely reach out to me. I got a live job posting on the company's website, so you can go check that out. All right. Without further ado, I've got a question for everybody. How do you go from serving pasta and pizza in a family restaurant for 26 years to controlling over 1,800 apartment units and $450 million in real estate? Well, most people would say that you can't, and that those are 2 completely different worlds. That you need a finance degree, a real estate license, and connections to a private equity shop to make that leap. But today's guest didn't get that memo. Gino Barbaro spent over 2 decades running his family's Italian restaurant. I mean, I've got a hotel and restaurant management background. I have worked in the hospitality space. That is long hours. That is tight margins, serving customers face to face every single day. And somewhere in the middle of that grind, he started buying apartment buildings. And not your glamorous Class A properties and booming markets, but cash flowing B properties in East Tennessee that nobody else wanted to touch, right? He didn't have a huge inheritance. He didn't have institutional capital. And he didn't even syndicate deals for the first, I think it was 1,000 or maybe 1,700 units. He just worked harder, learned faster, and stayed disciplined while everyone else chased the shiny object. Him and his wife, Julia, also have 6 children, so I don't want to hear any excuses about I'm too busy with children. I've only got 3, Gino, so I'm trying to catch up to you. We're working on the 4th one right now. But today, he's not just an investor. He's a certified money coach helping people heal their relationship with money. Again, he's a father of 6, teaching his kids about entrepreneurship, and he's a philanthropist who's donated over 335,000 meals to families in need, man. Gino's a proof that you don't need permission to build wealth. You need a plan, you need a partner, and you need trust and the guts to stick with it when everyone else thinks you're crazy, Steve. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, Gino doesn't even know me. He's never met me, but I'm one of those guys for like 10 years I've been following Gino Barbaro. So when his name came across to be on the show, I was stoked. And I hit him with a big bomb today because he didn't even know who the heck this guy in Kansas City is. But he is here. Gino, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, brother. And, that introduction made it seem as if, how am I going to be able to distill 26 years of doing one thing and jumping into another thing. So as you were saying that, I need to mention these 5 or 6 bullet points that I wrote down because it's not insurmountable. I just think that most of us in life, we don't lack clarity. We lack, that's what we truly lack. So the first thing, Logan, I got to jump into this real quick because well, the things that really helped me get out of how I was stuck, how I was on that hamster wheel. And the restaurant for me for the first several years was not that feeling. It was great. I loved it. But then it turned into the hamster wheel. It turned on to the weekly paycheck. That's what it felt like. The first thing was the identity. I started to identify as a multifamily investor. Early on, I didn't feel like that. And if you don't identify with what you're trying to accomplish, then you won't get on the phone and call a broker or underwrite a deal or talk to an investor. That's really important. The identity, becoming that which you want to accomplish is really important. The second one was I had that one restaurant for 20 plus years. I had no core values. I had no mission statement. I had no cadence of accountability. It wasn't really truly being run as a business. It was more being run as a mom and pop shop. Jake and I, within 5 years, have like 800 units. What changed? Well, the identity, these core values, these mission statements. The next thing was the partnership. I didn't do it alone. I ended up finding a really great partner. Now, I don't think everyone on the show has to run out and find a partner tomorrow, but I think long term, you're going to have these troughs and these valleys where right now it's hard to find a deal, and you think you're doing something wrong, and you have no one to turn to. Well, I've got my business partner that I can turn to daily and say, Jake, what's going on? Are we missing something here? And he does the same thing to me. So I lend partnership credence a lot. The next one, 2 more. I really wanted it bad. At the age of 38, I picked up T. Harv Eker's book, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And all I saw in my life was blame, 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 no responsibility, no control. After I read the book, your fruits are in your roots. I'm like, my roots are shallow. My fruits suck. I'm not providing value. How do I change that? I wanted it bad. And you need to want it bad. You either need to be moving from desperation or inspiration, as Tony Robbins likes to say. And I was moving from a point of desperation. And I think the last thing, which really can't be minimized, no matter what you do in life, if you don't work hard at it, the results will show. You need to work really hard. You need to work really disciplined. I know people talk about working hard and working smart. Before you work smart, you need to put some hard work into it. And then as you're learning the systems, you can say, well, how do I work smart? How do I hire other people to do this task? But I think in the beginning, you really need to put a lot of effort into whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Wow. Here he is, just bringing the value already. Look at it. It's up on the screen. Number 1, identity. 2, core values and mission statement. 3, find a partnership if that makes sense for you. 4, you've got to want it. And 5, hard work. Okay, so number 4, you've got to want it. I've started really recently listening to Jesse Itzler. And I learned about Jesse Itzler with Living with the Seal. That's where I first heard about this guy. And then I became a David Goggins fanatic. And then David Goggins had enough influence on me where I just ran an ultra marathon this year up and down a mountain. A Kansas mountain, let's be clear, but still it was a mountain. Okay. So he has a video about you have to want it. His sister unfortunately passed away, but she wrote this incredible book, and she got people like Oprah and these professional athletes and interviewed them. And Jesse's like, how did you do this? Right. Well, I wanted it. And then she had to figure out a publisher, for the book, which I know you've done. But he's like, how did you figure out how to get a publisher? You got to want it. And so he has this very inspirational video, Gino. You got to go check it out. It's just, you got to want it by Jesse Itzler. The second thing that I picked up there, the hard work thing. I just was listening to somebody else, and I remember this quote: hard work doesn't guarantee success, but without it, you don't stand a chance. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's one of the cleanest ways to frame that truth, right? Effort is not a promise of victory, but the absence of effort is a promise of failure. So I definitely resonate with a lot of what you just said, man. I really appreciate you dropping that knowledge.
I'm going to be a little controversial here and throw in politics right now. And when you see the political world and you see people get on and they get on CNN and they start debating Scott Jennings, they sound really good for about 30 seconds. But then you can see that Scott Jennings puts in the hard work. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Look up what Dunning-Kruger is. The people who are the smartest are usually the ones who stay quiet and really look around in the situation and then add after. Whereas the people who don't know what they're doing, they don't put in the hard work, they don't prepare, they show up, they're the loudest, they're the proudest, and they're usually the ones who know the least. And that's what's really been going on. If you listen to any of these politics, it's mind-boggling to me that they look great on camera, they may sound great, but when you dig down deep and you try to ask them, what is your thought on tariffs? Or what is your thought on the border? Or what is your thought on this problem? Or on currency? Or on taxes? That sounds really great with sound bites, but they're not prepared. They haven't done the hard work. And that is, I think, what makes the difference between somebody who's truly successful at what we're trying to talk about here, which is influencing others, maybe even influencing yourself. Because when you're prepared and you've done the work, you're more confident. You show up more. You're more passionate. You understand the topics and you can articulate what you're thinking and what you're saying at a much, I think, clearer level, and it shows. So don't be afraid of the hard work. Prep and hard work, they go hand in hand. Once you show up to a situation and you're prepared, you're able to be more relaxed and you're able to influence other people.
Yeah, 100%. That brings up something I was talking about earlier today, which was, when I stepped on the starting line, when I towed that line, of that 50K ultra marathon, I'm a 235 pound 6'3" ex-offensive lineman, right? NFL offensive lineman. I was 335 pounds. I hated running distance, right? But I knew, Gino, when I towed that line, I was finishing that race. There was no doubt in my mind. It was my first ultra marathon. I showed up as the largest person there, no trail shoes, didn't even know it was on a trail. These guys had trail shoes, they trekking poles. People are falling all over the place. It's kind of wild. It rained the night before. It was muddy. And I finished 16th out of 35 people there. And there was about 10 non-finishers, right? But I knew because I had put in the work, right? And I take the same approach when I was cut from the NFL. I had to go back to school, finish my master's degree. I needed some business experience, right? Because all I had done was worked in hot restaurants and do concrete for my work and bale hay in the hot Missouri suns. But what I did was I drove, and this was before Jake and Gino's podcast was out, but it was right when Lewis Howes was out and John Lee Dumas. Those were about the two only podcasts out there, right? And I was listening to CDs, Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and all these people. And then I would get to that job, and guess what I did? I picked up an analog phone 265 plus times a day, and I was a telemarketer getting told no 265 times a day. You fast forward 10 years, and now I'm an owner of over 1,500 multifamily units and 600,000 square feet of commercial space, and have a commercial real estate brokerage in Kansas City, still picking up the phone every single day, right? I track meaningful conversations. I track revenue generating meetings, and people keep asking, how do you keep showing up? Well, you reverse engineer this and you just look at it like an equation. If I do X plus Y, I'm going to get to Z. And then it's just about executing, right? It's just the hypothesis statement. So much value right there, Gino, that just kind of distilled down to me. And I just wanted to share that.
Logan, but you just proved my point with your story of identity. You were going to finish that race no matter what. Your mindset was, I'm going to identify as a runner. I was never a runner before, but when you stepped on that line and you towed that line, you weren't going to quit. That's what your identity was at that moment. And also it was about the core values and the mission. You said, that's my mission. See those words? I mean, unconsciously, these are the things that people who are successful do. And I think if you don't tap that into whatever you're trying to accomplish, and then you said, how do you do these things? Let's reverse engineer. What people need to understand is they need to ask the question, what are they trying to reverse engineer? Is multifamily for you? That's the thing. And that leads into your values. What values are you trying to espouse to? When we're younger, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, our values are formed between the ages of, say, 8 and 14 years of age. I had a dad who went to work in the restaurant, hard worker. He was really a leader of that restaurant. He was a good saver, all of those values that I have nowadays, I was formed because I went to work with him early on. So I understood now what my values are. And I look at what my life is right now. And a lot of my values are representative of what happened to me years ago. And I think if you're on this right now and you don't really know your values, and I don't want to hear marketing, bullet point values, growth mindset, whatever. I want to really for you to understand what yours are. Is it all about integrity? Is it really, are you saying hard work, but you're really not a hard worker? I mean, that's what you have to really, is it really responsibility and control? Because one of mine is responsibility. And over the last 2 years, I've really struggled with this estate planning that I'm doing. And my son said to me yesterday, he goes, Dad, these rules are so stupid with estate planning. Once you have to gift it. I said, Mike, after 15 million bucks, guess what? It's 40% on top of that. My underlying value is responsibility and being able to create a legacy for a future generation. So for me to have to struggle for the last 2 years, because my wife even asked me, why have you been struggling for the last 2 years? Why is it so important to you? Because unconsciously, it's part of my DNA. I want to be responsible. I don't want to hand my kids over a big pile of crap and say, figure it out yourselves. I would not feel good if I did that. So I understand that. And I want anybody listening to this, I want you to lean in to what your values are. I want you to lean into, hey, I want to build wealth. I want to create something for my family. Well, then guess what? Multifamily is the vehicle for you. That's the reality. Understanding that is so important. You need to build the foundation before you can start building the building. And I think most people skip the foundation and go to build a building. And then when the market cycle takes over and there's no deals and the investors are gone and you're having capital calls, well, that building crumbles because there's no foundation there.
Absolutely. Gino, I brought the slides off the screen because we're getting questions pouring in. So I'm just going to go with it.
Sure.
We talked about these identities and the core values here. We've got some young listeners here, budding multifamily investors, sponsors, brokers, probably as well, asking, well, what's the first step? Where do I get started with, are these, and you just said 14 to 18, these are kind of created. So how do I find out what these values are? What's the process?
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to go to the identity because I think it's important that I share this story. It's because I was at around 150 units and I was still at the restaurant. But I like to say I was hiding in the kitchen. I was washing dishes. I was really hiding. And one day I'm in the shed, and at my shed, I've got my pizza sauce, tomato cans, bags of flour. I'm basically doing $10 an hour work. That's what I'm doing. I'm reorganizing the shed, wasting my time basically. But at the same time, I'm on the phone with Jake. I've got the phone pegged to my ear, and at that moment, we are negotiating an $11 million real estate deal that if I know at that point I close that deal, game over. My life is completely changed. And that's the point when I said to myself, I need to stop hiding in this shed, and I need to start understanding that my identity is not just a pizza guy, but it's also this multifamily guy. And this is who I want to really espouse to. And as far as the values, for me, one of the big values, I do have 6 kids, and I don't want to say, hey, my family is a value. But the reason why I felt incongruous or I didn't like the restaurant anymore was as I was having more kids, I needed to work harder, and I needed to work on the weekends, and I needed to work on the holidays. And then all of a sudden, if you're going through something like this in life where you're feeling sort of off, but you don't know why, for me, that's what it was. I'm working when everyone else is having fun. I'm not spending time with my kids because I'm working all these extra weekends and holidays. And that's why I knew for me, the restaurant long-term was not a good fit for my values. If I'm speaking about family and spending time on one side of my mouth, but on the other side, I'm not taking those actions, sooner or later, you're going to realize I'm living a lie. And that's when it hurt. That's when all of a sudden the pain came up. That's when all of a sudden I want to go away from that. I want to leave that. So if you're in that situation, understand that, and understanding your values and understanding what you're trying to really hit as a goal, and understand that goals are not something you really need to hit or aspire to. You're not trying to really hit a goal. What you're trying to ultimately accomplish is you're trying to become the person that you need to become to be able to hit that goal. A goal is just an outcome. You need to fall in love with the process, as James Clear likes to say in Atomic Habits. What are the processes that you're building into to be able to set, to be able to hit that goal.
Mhm.
And then the person you become, all of a sudden, once you hit that goal, the goal is going to be moved even higher. That's the goal with actually setting goals. But your values are so important, because if you're misaligning and you're setting the wrong goals, for instance, one more quick story. I'm at the restaurant and I'm building this Jake and Gino company. And I'm saying to myself, man, I don't want to work weekends. But now all of a sudden, I've got to go to 30 events a year on the weekends. I've got to spend my weekends, away from home all the time. I may become the successful rock star on stage, but then am I really truly becoming successful? Because am I spending time with my family, or am I spending too much time in the business?
Yeah.
And that was a real awakening for me as well, is just be careful. Set your goals according to your values and your objectives, no one else's.
Yes. Well, I do remember, and we've got some people messaging in here saying Ed Milet. Yes. Ed Milet talks about raising the thermostat, right? And that's
Yes.
the identity. He's big on
Yes.
standards and identity, because him and Tony Robbins, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're close. And that's so important, because you raise the thermostat of your life through the standards that you keep, and that's going to create the identity. I also love this quote from John Wooden that I've been thinking about quite a bit lately, which is, you'll never outperform your inner circle. So,
Mm-hmm.
this is something I've been trying to translate into people, because I don't get as many inquiries, I'm sure, as you do, but my inbox is filled with people. Hey, can I pick your brain? Let's talk about how I can get in this industry, right? And the biggest thing that I'm saying is, well, who are you spending your time with?
Yes.
Because you had Jake, right? You guys had this idea. You're going to build Jake and Gino. You're going to build this business. And that allows you to have the wherewithal to say, I need to be around people that are doing this, And I think people are in a vacuum a lot of the times, and they're like, well, I'm listening to these podcasts and I'm watching these books. Like, I had a guy reach out to me earlier this week, had a call with him, and he said, man, I'm in 5 masterminds. And I'm like, okay, that's great, I suppose. He's paid all this money for these trainings, and he's confused now, right? Like, he's like, I'm around people, but it's the people that are trying to learn how to do it. And my feedback was, why don't you find one person who's already doing it and spend your time around there? Thoughts on that, Gino?
There's a couple thoughts on that. The first one is, are you around the right people? And that's important. And I created the Jake and Gino education, which we just exited about 9 months ago. I just didn't want to teach multifamily anymore. I wanted to get more into the money coaching space, the relationship with money space. But I created that so I could have my own mini mastermind with students who wanted to aspire to learn. I started the podcast 10 years ago, and I've been podcasting religiously for the last 10 years, because I get on calls with T. Harv Eker, with Ken McElroy, with Rich Dad Robert Kiyosaki, with Dr. Gary Chapman, with Jay Heinrichs. The list goes on and on. Every week I have my own mini mastermind. So my people that Jim Rohn says, who are the 5 people that you're surrounding yourself with? I've been surrounding myself with hundreds of amazing people over the last decade, and they've allowed me to learn from them, and I'm just growing my sphere of influence, and that's really important. And it's important also, if somebody's going to go out there and ask for advice, I'm going to tell you right now, 99% of the time, that person will not take the advice. So don't waste your time giving it to them. You're doing them a disservice. A person needs to have skin in the game. That's why socialism doesn't work, because there's no skin in the game. There is no incentive to take action. But if somebody comes and says, hey, Logan, I'm going to give you $500 for an hour's worth of your time, and you give them some great advice or some next action steps, they're more likely to take that advice as if they came to you and did it for free. So you need to invest in your education, because you are the strongest and best asset that you will ever have. You're so worth investing in. 2 ways to learn. You're either going to learn on the street, or you're going to learn in the classroom. I've learned on the street, real expensive, long time. You have to find the classroom that suits your needs, and you have to invest in that classroom, and you have to continue to invest in that classroom, because when you get to a certain level, great. At that level, you're tapped out. What's the next level? That's what you have to understand. It's just a constant journey. It's a constant journey of growth mindset. And I think people need to understand that it's okay to invest in your education.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Darren Hardy was a big influence, still is. Still watch Darren daily every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I've met some of his proteges, and they are crushing it in real estate. I won't say his name here because he likes to fly under the radar, but just look at my LinkedIn and you'll see him and I engaging. I went out to Scottsdale, Arizona, and met with him on Camelback Mountain earlier this year. again, trying to raise my influence or my circle of influence, right?
Mhm.
Being around those
Mhm.
people. But he says, early on, like the biggest thing for him was, making sure that he's got this board of directors kind of around him, right? It's almost
Mhm.
like, and he pays, I'm sure Darren Hardy's making a lot of money, 1% of his income every year to self-education. And if it's got
Mhm.
to pay people to be on your board of directors, fine, so
Yes.
be it. But that hit home for me so hard. Was like, oh my gosh, you're at that level and you're still paying people to be around you to give you an objective opinion and give you advice on what they've learned, and they're there to help see you succeed. I think that is the key in this thing,
Mhm.
because so many entrepreneurs, people kind of plateau, right? Because okay, I made it, I'm good, and then all of a sudden something happens and they drop back down instead
Mhm.
of always pulling themselves up by having those people around them. So that stuck with me in regards to what Darren Hardy had said with that board of directors, and reinvesting 1% of your income back into yourself, because it's probably going to be the highest ROI that you're going to see.
And you're going to hear, Logan, a lot of people say, well, I like my tribe, because that's what we call it. We call it a tribe of friends, a tribe of family. And the problem with them is they know who you are. Everyone knew that I was the restaurant guy. Even my mother, I had been in business with my mom for years. I had made a couple of big mistakes in real estate. So every time I looked at real estate, she would always say to me, it's too risky. You've got a nice little job. I ended up just saying to her, okay, I need to cut you off on this conversation. I need to go find somebody who's going to support me. So you can do both. You can decide to say, hey, my family's great, but I'm not going to engage with them in this part of my life. And I did that. And at around 200 units with Jake, about 2 years into our buying process, I turned to my mother and I said, hey, Mom, I'm going to be leaving in the next year to 18 months. I've got enough properties. And she was blown away. Now,
Yeah.
was it difficult? Absolutely. But at certain points, you need to just cut off your tribe and find another tribe. And there's so many different tribes out there right now. Go on Facebook. There's so many real estate groups out there. There's so many entrepreneurship groups out there. So many mastermind groups out there. You need to be around them, because collectively, as Napoleon Hill says, the mastermind is so powerful. It's such a way to brainstorm and to start thinking outside the box and to start looking at things differently. If you're in siloed and you're in what we call the bubble, you only see things one way. You only see things your way. Sometimes it's great to get somebody else's outlook or somebody else's opinion on a problem. And once you're able to tap into that and you have 5 or 6 or 10 people who have a ton of experience that can give you a different perspective, your business will start to change.
Absolutely. Well, right. Remind me of the crabs in the bucket, right? Which is, you always see, that story of the fisherman, and he's got all these crabs in the bucket, and the little kid runs over and says, "Sir, the crabs are going to get out of your bucket." And he goes, "Just watch." And the crabs are trying to get out, and another one cuts its legs out underneath, and it falls back down. Right. I mean, I love
Mm-hmm.
that story. Right. I
Yep.
mean, but it's a hard thing to do
Yes.
in reality. Right. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very hard thing to do. Got another question rolling in. Thank you guys for the questions here. We completely went off of the content for today, but that is totally fine. This is exactly what we needed to talk about. So, what were the early mindset changes that you had to make to step into that real estate mindset? Right. We talked about the identity, and a lot of people are talking about, they see these things about mindset and all this grit and all this, but like, for you, practically speaking, what was that early mindset change? And I mean, you just kind of laid out the timeline of that. It was, Mom, 18 months, I got 200 units, I'm here. But something switched within your mindset that allowed you to have the confidence to do that. We got to know what that is.
Well, now that I look back, I interviewed a gentleman named Eduardo Bracenis. He was the case study for the book Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Oh, wow.
Simple book, phenomenal book. And there's 2 types of mindsets. You have the fixed mindset that is always blaming, that thinks that their intelligence is fixed, they can't learn, they've got a bit of an ego, they're always blaming somebody else or something else. Think of the perennial John McEnroe. Phenomenal. But what was his big thing? He was always cursing. He was always complaining. He was always blaming the ref or the weather, or he's sick, or there's not enough sawdust. That's the fixed mindset. I think early on, I had the fixed mindset where I was like, I'm good. Don't know about real estate. I've made some mistakes. Don't want to take any more chances. when I started to understand the different mindset, which is the growth mindset, which is the growth mindset basically says it's okay. You don't know everything. You're not supposed to know everything. You're here to learn. You're here to actually make mistakes. Mistakes are not problems. They're problems that will usher in opportunities. And then it allowed me the grace to make those mistakes and to understand that I don't know it all. And that allowed some type of freedom. And I'm like, okay, now I can go and learn this real estate thing, because I thought everyone was born an entrepreneur. I thought someone had this natural born ability. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. Somebody may be more inclined to have that skill, but anybody can learn any skill. But if you have a fixed mindset when you're a teenager and everyone thinks you're great, and then you all go to college and you seem as if, well, I'm just really mediocre. The fixed mindset is going to pull back and not take any chances. The growth mindset is going to say, okay, how do I solve that? I mean, there's something going on here. I need to learn. And it's okay if I make mistakes, because I'll figure out what the mistakes are, and then I'll learn from those mistakes. And then from those mistakes, I'll continue along. So if you're looking at those two mindsets, it's so powerful. And if you're a parent out there, you need to be careful. You need to start putting your kids on a pedestal and saying how wonderful they are. Because when they grow up, life's going to kick them in the nuts, and they're not going to be as wonderful as they think they are. So when they do fail, they're going to be like, wow, I don't want to go through that again. Whereas if you're in the growth mindset and you're saying to your kid, hey, you know what? That person won first place. You're in third. It's okay. He deserved it, or she deserved it, because they worked really hard. They deserved it. You can get there too if you work hard and you learn. That's what I would instill in my children, as opposed to that fixed mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that you mentioned Carol Dweck mindset. I start off when I guest on podcasts a lot, and they people tell me, tell me where you're from. Well, it's Jefferson City, Missouri, which is the capital of Missouri, which is the definition in my book of the fixed mindset. No problem about it, right? But this mind was not set to be there. It was out there to be growing on a regular basis, right? And the other thing that I would say on the mindset front, which is this: you don't win or lose. With the fixed mindset, you win or lose. But with the growth mindset, you win or learn. And that's what you just said with those failures, right? And the only definition of failure I know is if you continue to do the same thing over and over and continue to fail. But if you learn from it and change your trajectory, we are the only animals that I'm aware of that have the ability to say, no, it's cold outside. I got snow out here in Kansas City. I just saw a bunch of geese flying south for the winter, right? They're doing that every single year. You don't have to do that, right? I mean, that's the definition of that. So I love that. Yeah. Well, let me put this back up here, because I think this is helpful for us as we continue to guide this conversation. Is, people probably hear about 1,800 units and assume, everybody always assumes overnight success, but scaling like that requires systems. And so I want to hear about sort of what you guys built first, right? Like, how did you get from that 200 units to where you are now, which is 1,800? That is a monumental leap.
Well, for us, it was pretty slow. And I can break it down into, let's say we're going to college for 4 years. So when Jake and I met in 2009, we decided in 2011, we're going to start buying deals. So let's assume 2011 is freshman year. Well, freshman year and sophomore year, the first 18 months, we didn't find any deals. So it was pretty painful. It was hard. We didn't have a map, or we didn't have a process yet. At the 18-month, it was second semester, college, sophomore, second semester, we found our first deal, 25 units. Then at the end of our sophomore year, we closed on a 36 unit. So after 2 years, Jake and I, we had 60 units. After 3 years, we had a little over 200 units. We had done 3 deals within a 3-year time span. And within a 4-year time span, we were around the 350 unit mark. So within 4 years, I mean, you think 4 years is a long time. It really isn't a long time. It takes a lot of work. And it's one of those things where it's linear, and then all of a sudden the trajectory goes up. And I think people are bought into this process online by saying, go big or go home. I always love to say, think big, but start small. Don't worry about starting with a 4 unit or an 8 unit, because you're going to learn, you're going to get your bumps and bruises. And then all of a sudden, Logan's going to see you and he says, oh, wow, Gino, you did a 4 unit. Great. Good job. You can close. I've got this 20 unit. And then all of a sudden you do a 20 unit. And then you start figuring that out. And then from 20 units, you maybe go back to a 35 unit. And then from the 35 unit, you may go down and buy a 15 unit. That was sort of our progression. We did a 25 unit, then a 36 unit, then 136 units. Then we bought a 22 unit, and then we bought a 281 unit. But what was very important throughout the process and throughout the journey, which I didn't understand what we did really well, Jake and myself, is we needed a business partner that had a strong balance sheet. We didn't have a strong balance sheet. What we had was we had a great business plan, we had a great grit, and we had great execution. My business partner, Mike, came on the scene on our second deal because he saw what we were doing down in the Southeast, where he was buying homes up in Connecticut for $2 million, renting them out for 10 grand a month. Well, we bought an asset for $650,000 that was generating 13 grand a month.
Right.
It doesn't take a genius to figure out whose model is much better. He's like, how do you do that? I want to be partners with you. And I met him at the restaurant. He was a customer of the restaurant. So it's when preparation is there, all that hard work shows up. I have a conversation with Mike one day. I'm the pizza guy, remember? All of a sudden, I'm starting to identify as that multifamily investor. I can talk about gold. I can talk about silver, oil, real estate. Mike is a hedge fund trader, so he's a very savvy individual. I was prepared for that conversation. I showed Mike the value that I could bring to him. He couldn't invest in real estate full time. We could. So we partnered up, and it was a great partnership, value for value. Actually, on our third deal, Mike lent us $500,000 for the down payment. He diluted his equity by giving us a loan. When we refinanced that property, he got paid out his loan, and we distributed the rest evenly. So it's really important as you start growing, understanding how you want to get into this. We didn't start syndicating up until about, I would say, around the 900 unit mark. You're correct. Around 2018, we ran out of capital. And syndication is a great model. It's a great strategy. It's a tool in the tool belt. We didn't need it until then. We were refinancing our properties and repurposing the money into the business. And this is important. I started with Jake in 2011. I left the restaurant in 2016. So for those 5 years, I was working full time. My lifestyle was being paid off by the restaurant. Everything that I made in the real estate, I was able to reinvest in the business. That's why my window was only 5 years. If I had quit full time and I had timed it incorrectly, I would have put so much more stress on the business. And I may have done a couple of deals that I shouldn't have done.
Sure.
So don't burn the bridges or the boats or whatever they want to say. You can burn them mentally, but you don't have to quit your job tomorrow. You can do it. And once again, my responsibility didn't allow me to do that. I know that would have been very irresponsible if I had quit from day one, put all that pressure on myself and said, hey, I need to make this happen. You can still make it happen. But for me, making it happen responsibly with a plan and with a goal in mind, it worked out so much better for me that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That answered a lot of questions that I think have just come in. So I'm just going to let that roll, because just go back and listen to the last 30 seconds of Gino talking about that. Now, one thing that stood out to me when I started, so I told Gino this before we got started here, but I started listening back in 2015 when you guys first got going, right? And I remember you had an episode where you interviewed a couple people, but then it was like some solo episodes right here on the 3 pillars of real estate. I still remember. I could see Jake's just button down shirt, and he's giving the presentation, he's doing the thing, right? Like, I mean, I remember this. This is it. You got to buy right, you got to manage right, and you got to finance right. And then you break that down in 3 different episodes. So definitely go check out that show, Jake and Gino show, back, and have to filter by the oldest episodes to find those. But I still think some of those, that was monumental. It was fundamental for me, man.
Well, it's interesting that you actually talk about those, because for people who are afraid to start and afraid they're going to look bad, when you go back, Jake and I, we didn't sound polished at all. We just loved what we were doing, but the quality wasn't great. The audio wasn't great. People were always commenting about that. But the key is we started. The growth mindset. We didn't have the fixed mindset where we said we're going to quit. Some of those episodes, the content was good, but I mean, it just was nowhere near to where we are right now. And I think that's the problem. I think everyone's waiting for the deal to align, for the market to align. It's almost as if you're having a child. I've got 6 kids. It has never been the right time to have a kid. No matter what you say, no matter how you plan, it's never the right time. It happens when it happens, and then you sort of deal with it. You jump in head first. You try to prepare as aggressive as possible, but when it happens, and it's never the right time. And it's the same thing with business. It's never the right time. And this framework is so important because if you're buying multifamily, if you're buying a business, if you're buying a single family home, whatever it is you're investing in, you need to think about it as we like to say, the wheelbarrow. Or if you want to think of a stool, there's 3 pillars to it. The first 2 back legs are the buy right. You're buying the deal. You need to buy it with buy right criteria. You need to understand what you're trying to accomplish. The finance right is the other leg. And oh, by the way, the bridge debt. I mean, right, all of a sudden, your finance right's a little wobbly, or if you didn't buy the deal properly, one of those 2 legs wobbles and your wheelbarrow tips over. The wheel of the wheelbarrow is in constant motion. That is the key performance indicators, the systems, the processes, the people. We need to focus on that unsexy part as well. We can't forget about that because in multifamily and in any real estate business you're getting into, because you are an investor first and foremost, but you are also a business owner. And if you don't understand that and you don't focus on operations, you have to have someone on the team focus on operations. It's important to do that component to the business, especially where we are in the market cycle right now. It's a lot harder to flip multifamily now as it was 3 years ago. So you're going to have to buckle down and learn how to operate your business right now in this part of the market cycle.
Well said. Well said. That selfishly, that is a question I'm going to ask right now. I mean, it's December 2025. What's the playbook right now for you guys? I mean, you've been investing, was it 2011 when you got started? Okay.
Yes.
That is now 14 years. And you got in at a pretty good time, I would say, 2010, 2011, pretty good time to get into real estate. I mean, we've seen kind of this wild ride over the last 5 years, right, of massive price increases in 2022 because of the fastest rate hike, rate cuts in history. Now we saw the fastest rate hike in history. How do you even navigate the multifamily landscape right now? If somebody's trying to get into this business, what are you telling them right now? What's the playbook look like?
It's very interesting that you said that I got in 2011. I got in with Jake in 2011, but I had been investing since 2002, and I made a couple of really terrible investments in 2005 and in 2007. The fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And it's interesting because I've been through various market cycles. And when you say 2011 was a good time to get in, hindsight is always 2020. You can look back at it and go, that was the best time. And you're probably right from a numbers perspective, but from a psychological perspective and from the way the market felt and the way you couldn't find debt, the way you couldn't find investors, it was very difficult. Those deals were great on paper, but they were hard to close. Deals were everywhere. And it was challenging back then. Now, if we fast forward to where we are today, I circled one word that I wrote down. And this one word is uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. I don't have a lot of, what's the word? A lot of confidence in the data that we're getting presented right now. Where's the jobs report? Are tariffs hurting inflation? Is there inflation? I mean, it's very, is the supply being burned off? Deliveries. I can tell you what's happening in our market right now. In our market of East Tennessee, we've got a lot of supply coming online. Rents are literally flatlined. And if you're going out and buying a deal right now, it's like catching a falling knife. Be very wary of buying a deal and trying to tell me that you're getting 5% rent growth next year. Right. In my market, it's not happening. We're hoping that the deliveries are delivered by mid to end of next year and the absorption is taking place. Also, be very wary of expenses because expenses have gone up. This is the thing that I really, truly hate when people talk about rent growth and talk about renters and how rents are always been going up. They always forget that taxes, insurance, labor, that's all gone up more than rent growth in the last 5 years. And it's a lot cheaper to rent a home right now than it is to actually buy a home. So be very wary where you're actually buying deals right now. And also be very dialed in to what your expenses are. Our expenses per unit has climbed tremendously over the last 3 years. And for us, we closed about $25 million in deals last year in 2024. We've only done a $12 million deal this year. That's all we've done. We've only done 60-something units this year. It's been very challenging because if you don't have to sell multifamily, now you're not going to sell. You're only going to get people who are sort of distressed. They sell. those deals are hard to make sense. And the people who are out there saying, hey, I'm just going to take a shot. Maybe I'll put this deal on the market. If it sells, great. If it doesn't, I don't have to sell. You need one thing in real estate to make a deal work. You need motivated sellers. And if a seller's not motivated, there's nothing you can do in the world to sort of make that deal work for you. So where we are right now, there's uncertainty. I think long-term, it's great. It's a basic human need, especially in your market in Kansas City. There are people constantly moving there. You have population growth. You have job growth. You have affordability in the market still. Those are all pillars that you need to have a healthy and vibrant multifamily market. If you're looking around, just be wary that you want some of those characteristics in the markets that you're investing in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the idea that people can tell me what is going to happen in 2026 is somewhat comical. One thing I will say, though, as an investor and a broker myself, at least in my markets, I am tracking leading and lagging indicators better than I think most people are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think what happens is these market reports get put out, and those are kind of lagging indicators. Sure,
Yes.
we have supply and things like that. But one thing that I've been really interested in studying here recently is Lightbox, which powers RCM, and RCM is Real Capital Markets, which is now being rebranded as Revere. Great company. They put out great resources. They actually showcase in their market reports what's being listed, what size of properties are being listed, and what's actually moving off of the platform, like what was identified as closed. That report right there is very telling. It is really, really interesting to see. And so I've been trying to basically distill this information to help people and myself position in the right way. But to say that we understand where the market is going, I mean, just look at the last 5 years and how many times people who have been calling the Federal Reserve's interest rates and where they think it's going to be, and then look at the probability and the actual data on where they were compared to what happened. There's not a lot of correlation there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
yes.
I think it's super important just to be in tune with that geographic location that you're focused on. And that's what I've tried to do. And there's a lot of noise out there. And you're exactly right. I mean, what was the one jobs report earlier this year that got revised down 750 or 900,000 jobs? So you're telling me that we revised down almost 1 million jobs, and people were making, investment. They were probably making decisions based on that data. And then 30 days later, a revision of those jobs down by, multiple six figures. That's really scary as a big business owner and trying to make decisions.
Even the inflation numbers, I don't even know if inflation's at that price at that point right now, because rents are dropping. Now, if you're telling me that rents aren't part of CPI, I don't even understand those things. But to me, rents are dropping. I mean, gas is down 30-40%. That's a huge driver. So you're telling me that, and the Fed is usually late to the party. That's the issue as I'm talking about this. The Fed knows there's no inflation. These rates should have been dropped a little bit slower, a little bit sooner, but politics gets in the way, and the Fed doesn't want to overreact, and their job is quote unquote inflation. And I get it, but you've seen the playbook. I mean, the rates should have been eased. And once you start doing that, it eases the burden of the households. Lines of credit are cheaper. Home equity loans are cheaper. You got car loans being cheaper. There's more money that can flow into the economy. And I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to slow play this, but I think they should have cut rates sooner, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you want to learn more about the oil and gas industry and how much impact it has, just go watch Man, because I'm on season 2 right now, just really enjoying watching whatever that guy's name, Billy Bob Thornton. Man, he's a great actor. But
he's
that
awesome actor.
He does a really good job of actually showing, hey, our whole economy, almost like 90% of the products have some sort of oil component to it. And so you better understand what's going on with those prices. So couldn't agree more. I think that, one of the funny things that, I said, I'm not saying real estate, but many days I will get done and I'm like, what did I just do? I was just on a call with, before this, 17 attorneys, Gino, negotiating a deal. It's a medical office building. I can't talk about it too much, but there's a merger going on. There were 17 attorneys on the call in 3 different companies, talking about the structure of this and what's going on here and there. And I just get done. I didn't say a word. And I'm like, I legitimately couldn't tell. Did that go well or did it go bad? What just happened? But I'm in real estate, right? Like, it's wild. So there's so many adjacent things that you have to be wary of and aware of, just to be, cognizant of what's going on in the market.
I agree.
So, well, let's do this. We got about 10 minutes left. So I want to make one pivot real quick here to what you've been focused on, now, right? So let's talk about that, right? And you've got kind of a new, this is a newer book, right?
Yes. I
Newer book.
launched a book back in January. And Logan, once again, the podcast, I interviewed a gentleman named Ken Honda. He was the, what would you call him? I mean, he would be the guru of happy money. He wrote the book Happy Money back in 2001. He is the Japanese guru. Not many people know him in the United States, but he sold, I don't know, I think 8 million copies of the book. And when he was on my podcast in his Japanese accent, he said, "You need to write happy money, happy properties, happy family." And I'm like, I don't really want to write another real estate book. I don't want to teach people I want to teach people about creating happy money, creating the happy family, and creating that happy legacy. Those three components to it. Because if we're out there making money, but we're not building happy families, what kind of legacy are we going to leave to the next generation? And I'm reading a book right now. Legacy is not something that you're creating. Legacy is something, or it's something that you leave. Legacy is something that you're setting in motion. So right now, today, if you change your mindset, well, I'm going to leave this to my kids, that's going to be my legacy. No, what I'm doing today, I'm setting it in motion. I'm taking action today, and I'm building today for what I want to leave to the future generation. Things completely change. And I think the other reason why I wrote the book was I had some students in our community who were doing really well, closing deals, and then had others who were more capable, more able, had more money, and they weren't. And it came down, I distilled it down to one or two things. I mean, other than the hard work and the mindset, it really comes down to a person's relationship with money, how they view money, what they view money, the limiting beliefs they have, the behaviors, the patterns, the characteristics that they've adopted from their family members, and they brought into adulthood. And once you start diagnosing that and seeing that a person who has a better relationship with money or understands what money is, that person is going to have a much higher chance of success at utilizing that money and growing their money.
Absolutely. Well, so glad. I'm going to check it out. I've got, the children's book, when you guys came out with it, Honeybee, right?
Yes.
I got it at the house, and my oldest daughter is just now starting to read, and I'm just waiting to pull it off to start reading it with her, man. So again, following you guys for a very long time. Original book, I don't even remember the name of it. Was it Wheelbarrow Profits?
Wheelbarrow Profits, yes.
Oh gosh, man, read the heck out of that book when I was getting started. I mean, it's just funny now that I get to sit here and spend some time with you. But let's do this, man. Let's get to the quick takes, because this is one of my favorite sections. And this is always hard for somebody as learned as you and well read as you. But let's right now. What's your favorite book and your favorite podcast that you're listening to?
It's interesting because I do read about a book a week. So I'm voracious right now. I'm reading books on legacy. So I'm reading a book on legacy from a gentleman named Bill High. He is David Green's co-author, and David Green is the founder of Hobby Lobby. Yes. And to me, it's interesting because I'm changing my whole mindset on legacy, where Bill High talks about, and David Green talks about, that we don't own anything here. God really owns it. And if you take that mindset, we're just stewards of it. Yes. We're here. And if you think of it from that place, that stewardship, well, okay, great. I'm a steward. But what do stewards do? They really take care of their assets, and they really teach the next generation and empower the next generation. And it really isn't just about financial. There's three components. There's a human component to it, an intellectual component, and a financial component to legacy. Those three components, you need to learn them, because if you're just doing financial, great, you're going to hand off a bunch of money to the next generation, and they're not prepared for it. You have to focus on the human and the intellectual component as well.
Absolutely. Something that I'm thinking about quite a bit, as I'm continuing to grow our family, and, my children being, coming of now actual little people, right? Because the first couple of years, they're just surviving. But now I look at my daughter, 6, and she's starting to make decisions. My son is, hanging out with me a lot more now. So it's just, something that's on my mind quite a bit. So I'm glad that that's where your head is at. And I have had some interaction with some folks that actually work with Hobby Lobby, and spent a lot of time talking to them about David Green, and have learned quite a bit about him. So fantastic. All right. Most transformative habit in your life,
It's interesting. I think the habit, I would say more the mindset, is that I just, when I need to get something done, I don't make any excuses. I do it. And that's one of the things where when I went back into my history as I was a little child, being at 5 years old, going to the store with my grandmother and not being able to buy something and walking away and having that feeling of, wow, if I don't get something done now, I may never get it done. And now that's a positive, but it's also a negative because it sometimes puts you on edge where you're saying to yourself, I need to do it. I need to do it. But I've been able to compartmentalize that and to say, hey, I need to get this project done, or I need to underwrite this deal. I've been able to not make excuses. And when I decide to do something, I will go follow through on that. And that's a really powerful habit, because if you can do that every day and you set your mind to certain tasks and you accomplish those tasks instead of saying, I'm going to push them off or I'm not going to worry about them. If you can focus on what needs to get done and you don't make any excuses, and when that resistance comes, as Stephen Pressfield says, you may feel that resistance, just know that you're on the right track. I've been able to sort of overcome that in life and say, yeah, I'm going to finish this. I'm not going to make an excuse.
Love that. 100%. All right. So if somebody wants to get started in multifamily today, what's the best advice for them right now?
Well, the first thing is, why multifamily? Does it fit your goals? Do you have at least a general understanding of business and real estate? How are you going to start? Are you going to have your own capital? Are you going to learn how to sell or finance? Are you going to raise capital? These are all things that you need to start working on right now. Remember the foundation? Because if you're going to say to me, hey, I've got plenty of money, don't need to do that, go on my own, great. That's one person. Oh, Gino, I don't have any money. I'm going to have to learn how to sell or finance or raise capital. That's a different path. Or, hey, Gino, I'm a doctor. I don't have any time, but I've got a pile of money here. Well, that's a different avatar.
Yeah.
I think understanding what you need to what you're trying to accomplish is really important. And that's a really unique set. Are you trying to quit your job? Are you trying to create some income? Are you trying to create some tax benefits? Those are all important. But if you want to start, think about the buy right, think about the manage right, think about the finance right, select the market where you want to invest, and the market comes down to demographics, and then think about how much time you can dedicate. And finally, start going to some events, start going to some meetups, start going to some different seminars, and start listening to people talk about it, and start building your Rolodex of people in the space. It's not a big space. There aren't a ton of people in there. Once you've gone to 3 or 4 events, you start seeing the same faces. But really, it comes down to your goals and your objectives before you can go out and say, I'm going to do this. Don't do what I did. Don't start off by saying, hey, I got to find a deal. That's the worst thing that you could possibly do, because you don't even know what a deal is. That's where the problem is. Look at it as a business and then start trying to understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Great advice. You've been doing all the reading and research and even wrote a book on legacy. So what does that mean to you personally right now?
Legacy is something where I would classify it as 3 pillars. I mean, I'm working on the faith and values component. I'm working on the financial component, and I'm working on the connections component. And all 3 of them to me are equally positive. I mean, they're equally important. Most people focus just on the financial. I'm going to create generational wealth and I'm going to give it to the next generation. But a lot of us come across the fact that we've built all this wealth. Is the next generation going to be a steward? Do you want shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations? I'm in my 2nd generation. My parents would have been my 1st generation. I'm 2nd generation. That means my kids would be the 3rd generation. Are they going to go back to shirt sleeves? I don't want that to happen. So if I can focus on our family, our values, creating a core values and a mission statement for the family, letting them be part of it, treating the family as a business, because running a business and running a family are very similar. Understanding that component. Then the second component is the financial, and I'm creating, personal finance videos. I homeschool my kids, so I'm teaching them that aspect of the finance, understanding the business of what our family does. They have those 2 components, and then the third part is the connections, is the family leadership, is the ability to get together as a family and to really, live and exist together happily as a family. I'm trying to put all 3 of those together, and trying to serve other families out there that just don't want to make money today and leave it to their kids. They want to be able to build a business, teach their kids not only to build that business, to be able to grow that business into the next generation.
So well said. Inspiring. I'm over here. My wheels are just spinning. I feel like I've gotten a master class today, and feel like I've got to speak to a mentor of mine that I've not even told was a mentor of mine that I've been following for 10 years. So I really appreciate you being here today, Gino, sharing all the information. Probably the easiest interview I have ever done in my life, because one, I wanted to do it very badly, but two, you make it really easy. But if people want to connect with you, point them in the right direction, man. I've got some of the ways that they can here, but what's the best way for them to follow you?
You know, you say it was easy. It's easy because you love what you're doing and you're creating happy money. You may not become a millionaire tomorrow by doing this podcast, but you're doing something that you love. And it shows. And that's why it's easy. And that's why I think it's easy for me as well, because I love being in this genre. I love to be able to teach. That's where my happy money comes out. I mean, if you want to learn more, just go to barbaro360.com. It's my last name. It's BARBARO 360.com. We've got our podcasts on there. We've got the book where you can download the book. We've got a money quiz on there as well. So if you want to engage with us, just go to the website.
Yeah, awesome. Barbaro360.com. We'll be linking that in the show notes for sure. If you're interested in doing any type of commercial real estate here in Kansas City, feel free to reach out to us at mwcreadvisors.com. This has been an unbelievable episode. Gino, thanks again for being here, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.